Well, there's a new Hellraiser film out on Hulu. Let's see what sites they have to show us. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today we're going to talk about that box or one similar to it. But before we talk about that box and see what sites they have to show us, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I would appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about the brand new reboot or requel of Hellraiser. It just dropped on Hulu on October 7th, last Friday. It's rated R. It's 2 hours long. It was directed by David Bruckner. And let's get into this one. I just sat down and watched this last night, finally. I've been interested in this since I first saw the trailer. And in the beginning of this film, we see a woman acquire the box. It's not exactly the box from the original film, like that one right there, but it's one that looks very similar. And she's buying it for her employer, this rich guy who's having this wild sex party at his big ass mansion. And right in the beginning of the film, this woman is sitting at the bar and this young guy sits down next to her. He's having a drink and she sends him down the hallway to meet the owner of the manor. And he sets him up. He gets pricked by the box, the new box, not that one. I felt like I have to keep saying that. And pretty soon the chains come for him, as we all know if you're a fan of this franchise or ever seen the first one. And he is taken in a very gruesome and gory way, and we are on our way. Then we meet our main character, Riley. We discover right away that she's a recovering addict, although we see her taking drugs during this film, so we could say that she's a lot of recovering yet to do, and she's having sex with the guy she just met called Trevor, and she lives with her brother and his boyfriend and this other girl. And she's down in her luck. Her brother makes, after her new boyfriend leaves, her brother explains to her how she owes him money for the rent. He can't keep covering for her. Money is tight. And before you know it, her new boyfriend, Trevor, talks her into robbing this container, which we don't know why he knows this information. And there's supposed to be something valuable in it. And they break into it. Nobody's around. And they find the new box. And pretty soon, some weird shit starts to happen. Her brother ends up kicking her out because she comes home drunk. She takes the box and takes off. She takes these 4 pills. She starts tripping out. Her brother finds her in this playground, and she sees what we know is to be a Cenobite off in the distance. We don't get a really good look at it. And her brother gets pricked by the box, and he goes into the bathroom to clean his hand, and he gets taken. We don't see it. He disappears, and that's where the mystery really begins of Riley trying to find out what happened to her brother along with his boyfriend, and she calls on Trevor to help her out. And they go see the woman at the mental institution. She tries to help them, but Riley really doesn't seem to take anybody's advice here. If she took her brother's advice, she wouldn't even be in this situation to begin with. And that woman gets taken, and before you know it, they all end up at the mansion. Who's left? Her brother's boyfriend, the girl that lives with them, Riley, and her boyfriend, Trevor. And that's when shit really goes downhill. And we have people getting tortured to death. We find out the rich guy's still alive, but he's being tortured by the new pinhead or priest. And at the end of the film, she sacrifices Trevor to save her brother's boyfriend, and they get to walk out while the rich guy is torn apart in hell. And that is the end of Hellraiser 2022. What to like about this film? Well, I'll get right up front. The makeup effects on the Cenobites themselves are pretty spectacular. I will give them that. I love the redesign. I'm there for it. It looks great. Not sure I love how it's lit half the time. We'll talk about that in a minute in the negatives. Jamie Clayton takes over it for Pinhead. They call her the priest or priestess, but really she's Pinhead. So I'm going to reference her as Pinhead. So she takes over for the great Doug Bradley, who's been doing it forever, up until the last sequel, I think, which I haven't seen, because let's be honest, this franchise has been in the shitter for a very long time. I would say anything after part 4 is pretty much not worth watching at this point. I've seen 5. We all know that script wasn't meant to be a Hellraiser film. It was a detective noir story that they brought Pinhead into just so they could slap the Hellraiser tag onto it. The fucking Weinstein brothers were famous for that shit with some of the horror sequels. So this pretty much, I guess you can call this maybe a sequel to the original, but Jamie Clayton does well with the Pinhead character. We do not see her until after an hour into the film. So if you think you're going to see a lot of Cenobites right up front, no, you got to wait to see them. But once they show up, they are mighty impressive, the makeup effects. And most of the effects that I could tell, most of the makeup effects were all done practically. So that is always a plus, because thank God they didn't go digital, because it would look like ass. The cast here is okay. The main lead, who plays Riley, she's hard to be. If at first you're kind of sympathetic towards her, but it's hard to keep sympathy for her throughout the whole film. At every turn, she does not listen to her brother. If she listened to her brother to begin with, she wouldn't be in the situation she's in, and her brother would still be alive. So it's hard to root for her as the movie goes on. Although at the end, the choices we have left, you kind of want her to see her get out, and her brother's boyfriend. Her brother's boyfriend's one of the most virtuous people here, along with her brother. Everybody else, I mean, Trevor seems like a nice guy, but right from the beginning when he says about stealing something out of this cargo ship, it smells like bullshit, and it smells like a setup, and it ends up being a setup because the rich guy paid him because he's suffering, and he wants Trevor because he needs some sacrifices to Pinhead so he can get out of his torture, because he says about how, just like Frank in the original, has felt almost every pleasure there is, and this was the next evolutionary step for him. But now he's in absolute pain because he's a device on him that pulls at his nerves but won't allow him to pass out or go numb. So he's in agonizing hell at this point, but he's still alive, and he wants to sacrifice these people so he can get resurrected through the priests so he can live yet again. And at the end, Riley does make the sacrifice of Trevor, although she knows Trevor screwed her over. He set her up. Although I kind of feel bad for Trevor, because I think he actually kind of likes Riley, but he's a scumbag for setting him up for something so sinister. And even if you think back on it, once they make that reveal, she offers for him to hold the box, and he wants nothing to do with it because he knows the power that it holds. More positives, though, I think the directing is competent here. David Bruckner is not one of my favorite filmmakers, but he's a competent filmmaker, and it's competently directed. For sure. Like I said, Riley, the main character, she becomes grating at times. Like, she's so dismissive of everybody's advice. And I know she's a recovering addict, but it just becomes off-putting at some point where I really didn't give a shit if she lived or died. At the end, we're given a choice, and at that point, she's one of the more sympathetic characters, but there's not too many sympathetic characters. The two biggest ones were her brother and his boyfriend, and her brother gets killed, and he doesn't come back. The effects, the light, I'm going to go into my negatives here. I think this is the most solid Hellraiser film we've gotten since the first three. I know that's not saying much. Now, I like the first four. I even like part 4 to varying degrees. I got to have fun with that film. It's not a perfect film. That film was fucked with by the Weinsteins, so badly that the director wanted his name taken off. They brought in Joe Chappelle to do some reshoots. That movie is a huge dumpster fire, but I still enjoy it. I like 3 for its over-the-topness. Anthony Hitchcock's directed that film. The first 2 are still the best, and I would say this is the third best. My negatives with it are it's way too damn long. This is 2 hours and like 1 minute long, and this movie drags. They could have cut 15 minutes out of this film easily to pick up the pace. There's shots of just the Cenobites walking, and they look cool, but just walking slowly towards the characters, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and it builds up, and there is some violence here. It does explode into some bloody violence at the end, but there's some sequences that just drag out, and it's like, why wasn't this cut down? I don't need a choppy or quick cut, but there's just scenes of just Cenobites standing around or walking slowly towards the camera, and it's like, there's no suspense here, really. There really isn't. It's just a cool-looking makeup effect walking towards the camera or walking towards the character at a very slow pace. I think the lighting scheme, I didn't like the way... I thought Pinhead looked really cool. I thought she looked really cool in the film. There was at times, though, when the lighting choice was odd. She looked weird because of the lighting choice. The movie looks too clean, too polished for a Hellraiser film. My vision of a Hellraiser film, especially the first film, it felt dirty. It felt grimy. It was nicely shot, don't get me wrong, but it felt dirty. It felt like a movie that I had to sneak behind my parents' back to watch when I was a kid, when I first saw it. It just had that grindhouse, grimy feel to it as you were watching it. It felt dirty watching that film. This film just looks like a glossy, digital, brightly lit, although it is dark in some scenes, but it just looks like, I don't know, it looks like a generic streaming movie. Stylistically, again, it's competently shot, but stylistically, the style is not here. I'm sorry. It's just not. For me, it didn't work, the style of it. The lighting scheme, again, I think the lighting is just not my taste. I didn't care for it. It should have felt dirtier. It should have felt grimier. And almost felt like it does get gory. It definitely earns its R rating. I don't know why they went with R. They could have went unrated. It's on a streaming service, but whatever. There is some legit gore in here, and it looks spectacular. It's practical. This film, while there are some really good gore moments, especially towards the end, and I was impressed with the effects here. Kudos to the effects team. It was almost like it was holding back, like it was too safe of a movie. Where the first Hellraiser film, I felt like it was a totally, like anything could happen in that film. Even the sequel went batshit crazy with the gore. Here it almost felt too safe, and it was predictable. I knew what was going to happen. The rich guy was still lingering around. I knew that was going to be the plot, and it was. So that didn't surprise me. There was no surprising moments here. Everything felt safe. I never felt like our main character was in danger at all. I knew she was going to get out of it at the end. Unfortunately, I wish she wouldn't have, because I didn't really care for her all that much. So again, this movie is way too long. 15 minutes can be cut out of this easily. There's a lot of just lingering shots of Cenobites looking cool, but there's not much tension because they're just walking slowly towards the camera or towards the character. There's not much suspense there, honestly. There is some payoff with the gore. There is some pretty cool damn gore here. I just felt the movie got a little boring, and it should never have been that way. It should have been unpredictable and felt dangerous. At least that's my opinion of what the first two Hellraiser films felt like when I saw them. This didn't have any of that. This felt like a very sanitized version of Hellraiser. Although a very bloody one at points and very gory, it just felt safe, glossy, and not dangerous at all, and very predictable in my mind. Again, I still enjoy it. It's a solid film. It's the best movie in the Hellraiser franchise we've gotten in a very long time. That's not a very high bar to jump over, though, because as we know, this franchise has been a shit show for a very long time. Now, that's my thoughts, and I'll get my rating in a second. Musical cues from the composer of the first two Hellraiser films, Christopher Young, are used throughout this film. As soon as they popped up, I recognized them immediately. It took 4 hours to get the actors that were playing the Cenobites into their makeup, and you could tell they did a great job with the makeup, as I said before. Again, you don't see this Pinhead until like an hour and 8 minutes into the film. I would give this iteration of Hellraiser a 6.5 out of 10. I'm in love with this film. It's a solid movie. I just want to give it a 6.5 out of 10. And I'll give them praise for going with practical effects over digital. If you've seen it yet, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with the out of the theater reaction for Halloween Ends and a review for Tales from the Dark Side and the Funhouse. A lot of cool shit coming up for Halloween. I hope you're all having a great October. And bye.